Well, back to one of our top stories now. Harsh words and tension between world powers after a US strike on a Syrian airbase. Russia and Iran both digging in and reaffirming their support for the Syrian government. They say the US strikes crossed a red line. They were also fresh airstrikes on rebel-held Idlib too this weekend. Activists report 16 people were killed on Saturday. For more on all of this, I'm joined by Fawaz Gerges, who joins us from London. He is the author of the book ISIS, A History, and chair of contemporary Middle East studies at the London School of Economics. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Fawaz, these strikes by the Trump administration were meant to send a message to the Assad regime and drive a wedge potentially between Iran, Russia and Syria. The problem is, if you look at the statements from these countries, it looks like that alliance is getting stronger, even more united in the face of this attack. What do you make of it?
Well, the target was not Assad. The target was Moscow and Tehran as well. And the message has been received in Damascus, in Tehran, and in Moscow. You're talking about a very potent coalition. The question is not whether to attack a military base in Syria. The question is, what's the end game of the Trump administration? What will the Trump administration do if there is escalation, military escalation? As we have seen in the past 2 days, dozens of people have been killed in the same place, in the vicinity of the place which the chemical attack took place a few days ago. That is, the Trump administration will face tremendous pressure to escalate or to face humiliation, because the reality is you're going to see more escalation, more war by proxy, and it seems to me, with all due respect, that the Trump administration has no strategic political vision for the morning after, and it seems to me he does not have the desire and will to invest substantive major political capital inside Syria. So before we celebrate in Washington, the celebration has been that this is a muscular president, this is a strong president, Barack Obama was a weak president. The challenge and the measure is not to fire 59 missiles. The challenge is what will the Trump administration do in the face of a major escalation by this coalition, Russia, Iran and Syria?
You raised a good question there when you asked about what is the end game. Is there a future, do you believe, when the war ends there and Assad remains in power? The US believes that that can't happen, but if Assad goes, will there be a vacuum of power? Could that be worse?
Well, I mean, this is the working assumption of both the United States and the European powers and the international community. They want to make sure there is political transition. The whole process of political transition that the international community has been talking about is to make sure that the security and institutional and political vacuum is not filled either by ISIS or by Al-Qaeda. But the reality is the Assad regime does not really believe in any political transition. I mean, we have misunderstood the logic behind Bashar al-Assad. He wants to win. He has constantly and repeatedly reiterated that this particular war will not end, cannot end, except by his victory over what he calls the terrorists and the comeback to the United States of America, to the Trump administration. Just a few days ago, Trump officials have made it very clear that the overriding goal of US foreign policy was not to topple Assad. The priority was ISIS. Now we are being told that the goal is to remove Assad from power. Fine. Let's say that this is, but what's the strategy? That is, what are American assets in this particular, theater called Syria, where Moscow and Iran have invested tremendous resources, blood and treasure. At the end of the day, the reason why I'm skeptical about the Trump administration, he is a salesman with a short span, impulsive. He does not really have a strategic vision for Syria, and also he is fascinated with hard power. But the reality is, at the end of the day, you cannot resolve the Syrian crisis without a sustained diplomatic engagement and engaging the real stakeholders. Who are the real stakeholders? Russia, Turkey, and Iran. And so far we are waiting for the Trump administrations to put forth ideas on the table to really help end the catastrophe, the bloodbath that has been raging in Syria for 6 years.
Trump came to power on this notion of American first, this nationalistic notion that he wouldn't be a global player, that he just wanted to look after his own backyard. Does this strike change that? And what would your advice be for a solution in Syria? It's a huge problem.
It is, I mean, a massive problem, as you've suggested. I mean, I wish and I hope that Donald Trump appreciates the complexity of the crisis in Syria. Multiple conflicts collapsed in one. A raging civil war, war by proxies by regional powers, a global conflict that could really have the potential to escalate into a major crisis. It could. I'm not saying it will. The reality is this particular president, with all due respect, full of contradictions. On the one hand, it says America first and America last. On the other hand, now it wants to really do a regime change in Syria. Okay, how? What are the tools by which the US administration is really willing to change, Assad in Syria? And that's why, at the end of the day, to come back to your really key question in this particular interview, my fear is that Donald Trump himself and his team do not know what the end game is. Is it the defeat of ISIS? Is it the removal of Assad from power? Are they willing to invest political capital, away from America first into a global strategy? We have to wait. There is no clarity. There is no clarity, and that's why it seems to me, I fear that the limited and targeted attack by the Trump administration could be counterproductive. We have already seen escalation by Russia and Syria. Dozens of people have been killed, and thousands of Syrians are going to lose their lives in the next few weeks and next few months. What is the end game of the Trump administration? How will he respond to this really qualitative escalation in Syria? Hardly any word so far.
That's right. We will wait and see. Fawaz, Gerges, always great to have your perspective on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.